So I've got a real problem with my tractor that I didn't know I had until I installed my grapple. Hey there, hobby homesteaders. Welcome back to Peak's Peak. My name's Lucas, and we're sharing our hobbies on 38 acres in eastern Kentucky. And today, I want to talk about the hydraulic functions, the third function or diverter valve, and grapple system that's on my TYM 4820 tractor, because I ran into a real problem that I didn't understand what was going on or why it was happening until I did a little bit of research. And I'll bet I'm not the only one that's ever run into this. Now, if you're new to our channel, our main channel is Peak's Peak Hobby Homestead, but we have a second channel, Peak's Peak Outdoors, where we share our outdoor adventures on Peak's Peak. And we get into a little bit of everything around here, from raising animals to running our sawmill, cutting down trees, clearing land. We're making pasture. We are embarking on a new adventure of building a tiny house and all sorts of great things around here. And I've been using this TYM 4820 as my woodyard tractor for several months now, and I've been really happy with its performance. It's done a fantastic job. And when I first got this tractor, I went ahead and had the dealer order me the rear remotes and the third function valve that I could put on this tractor. Now, the third function valve, it's not a true third function, rather it's a diverter valve that we're using on this, and that's going to come into play into what I ran into here. So if you're newer to tractors, you may not realize why they call it a third function valve, but the reason is simply because your loader has two standard functions, and that is moving the arms up and down and moving the bucket up and down. But for lots of reasons, we want extra functions on our loaders so that we can run other attachments like the grapple, or a post auger or lane shark makes a really cool like bush hog attachment that tilts, and there are lots of things that you can run on the front of a tractor if you have more hydraulic outlets. That's why we install a third function. But a true third function valve works independently of the other hydraulics so that you can control those hydraulic valves in both directions. But a diverter valve for a third function actually just takes the hydraulic flow that would be going to the movements of your bucket, and it diverts that flow to whatever other hydraulic function you have going. So in my case, when I want to open and close the jaws of my grapple, I can't simultaneously tilt or raise my bucket because I'm taking the flow and moving it to the jaws of the grapple in order to operate that. So that's how the third function diverter valve works. And when I first got this grapple, the first thing I had to do was change my hydraulic connections, because the grapple came with flat face couplers, which are a higher flow, so they're actually a better coupler than the basic ball valve or what do they call it, a tappet or whatever it is, the other flow. So I decided I would just go ahead and upgrade and put flat face couplers onto my diverter valve connections so that I would be ready for the higher flow and everything would be good to go. When I first installed those hydraulic couplers, I had the functions opposite of the way that I really wanted them to work. When I use a grapple, I want the clamping function to happen in the same direction of the joystick pull as the curling function, because normally when you're picking something up, you're curling and clamping at the same time, or at least as close to it as possible, with a diverter valve. So you'll raise a little bit, clamp a little bit, raise a little bit, clamp a little bit. But when I first hooked it up, I had it the opposite. So pulling the joystick to the left would open the jaws of the grapple. And everything functioned properly, it was just backwards. So I took everything apart and I swapped my male and female fittings for my hydraulic flow so that I could reverse the flow and move the joystick to the right in order to open my grapple. So I swapped out those two couplers, got everything hooked up, and went to test it, only to find that when I was ready to open the jaws of the grapple, when I would move the joystick all the way to the right, they would start to open and then they would just fall back closed. And I thought, there's something wrong with my hydraulic system or my couplers or something. I couldn't quite figure it out, but I knew that if you just lightly move the joystick to the right, they would go ahead and open. Well, I had some projects to do and I had a video to shoot, so I decided, well, I'll just roll with it and worry about it later. And I actually ended up doing several projects using it that way and got pretty good at opening and closing it without it being a problem. Now, when you move it all the way to the left, it clamps exactly how it's supposed to, but you just can't move the joystick all the way to the right and get the grapple jaws to open. Now, I'll be the first to admit, these are the kind of problems I have because I'm rambunctious. I go at everything 900 miles an hour, and so all the way to the right is the only way I ever use the lever. It's wide open. That's just how I operate. So, for me, it's only natural to get the most function out of it. You move it all the way to the right and get wide open function. Well, what I didn't realize is that this tractor has what has been referred to on YouTube as the hidden loader function. Now, I should have been aware of this because one of my good buddies, Ed, has a video called the hidden loader function that has over 2 million views. So I'm one of the only people on the planet that really didn't watch that entire video. Sorry, Ed. I kind of assumed his video was about the float function. And so, I knew it was a good video for him and I was, but I didn't feel like it was something I needed. So I blew it off. Well, that's what I get for not supporting my pals. Because Ed talks in that video about the dump function. Now, his works differently. I went back and watched his video, and the Kubota dump function works differently than the TYM because it does the dump feature in the beginning movements of the joystick, and then it slows it down when you move it all the way past the detent to the right. But on the TYM, you can feel a moment when the joystick stops, and if you push past that, opens up the dump feature to where the hydraulics just start dumping fluid instead of moving fluid with the pump. So that when you have a load of gravel in your bucket, you can just dump that load of gravel quickly. But what that does when you're using it in the diverter function is causes your jaws to start to open, and then when you reach the dump feature and it dumps hydraulics, well, they just fall back closed. And there's no pressure behind it. And I learned this because I finally messaged Brock and I said, hey, what would cause my grapple to act this way? And he said, the hidden loader function. So here we are. We learn something new every day, right? To illustrate this, I'll show you, of course, my diverter valve just has one button right here on the joystick. So when I move the joystick to the left, it curls the log back. When I move it to the right, it dumps it. When I press the button and move it to the left, I clamp with the jaws of the grapple. When I press the button and move it to the right, it opens the jaws of the grapple. So it's a very simple setup, but what I run into is me being rambunctious. I push the button, move it all the way to the right, and my jaws just close. So you can see as I push it just a little bit, they open. But if I push it all the way, they start to fall back closed because I fall into that dump category where it's just releasing the hydraulic pressure. So if a little bit opens the jaws all the way, and I lose that feature of the jaws opening because I'm just dumping the hydraulic flow. And this seems like it's fundamental, but I immediately just thought I had a problem because I want to open faster, so I'm pushing harder. So really my tractor doesn't have a problem at all except the operator. And guys, I kind of, I don't mind to make fun of myself because I understand that it's all about getting out here and doing stuff and learning, and if you're not doing anything, you're not going to make any mistakes. And lots of guys have the gift of being able to get on YouTube and be an educational resource for their viewers because they really get into the nuts and bolts and the details of how everything's working. And me, I just jump into the water with both feet and start swimming. And this is one of those instances where I didn't understand what was going on. I'll bet I'm not the only one. So for all of you who already knew this, hopefully this wasn't a waste of time and you at least got to enjoy hearing about me struggle to figure out what was going on here. But for those of you who weren't aware, or you're just getting into tractors, or you're getting your first grapple bucket, understand the difference between a true third function and a diverter valve function. Because if you have this hidden loader function, as Ed called it, then you're going to want to be aware of how that's going to affect the operation of your implements with that third function hydraulic flow. Because it does make a difference. It takes some practice and getting used to for me to just lightly open the jaws rather than pushing this joystick all the way over. That's my story. It is what it is. You can't know it all, right? So this Easton-made grapple is doing a fantastic job on our TYM 4820. We're getting a lot of work done, a lot of property cleanup done, and it's great for working around our sawmill and moving logs, now that I know how it all works. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video, getting to hear me talk just a little bit about the functions of the tractor and the way that these hydraulics operate. We appreciate you guys supporting the channel. Until next time, get outside and enjoy God's creation, because it's beautiful out here. Y'all have a good day.